Hi, I wanted to do a video on a topic that my son had sent me. He and I talk about biblical things. We talk about theology. And he sent me the video. And what it's talking about is, the title of it is Tyrant Missing from the King James? The idea of many of the pro-Geneva Bible people are that the King James can't be trusted because the king had them leave out words. He was controlling it so much that he would choose to leave out words, and one of the words they're saying he left out was the word tyrant. This way people wouldn't come back on him. So, okay, is that a legitimate reason for choosing one Bible over another? So I started looking into it, and the article he sent me was from the Baptist Basic, and you can see the title there. Is Tyrant Missing from the King James Version? I like that where he goes, "Thou shalt not use the word tyrant." So actually, it's not a pro-Geneva statement, but he goes in and gives actually the argument from their side, which I thought was very interesting. To like to see what the other side has to say. He doesn't think that this is a problem in the article, but he does give an example of a video that that talks about the tyrant issue, and I was going to play that and then reference from that to some of the things that I've seen. So let me play this real quick.
There was one word that King James did not allow in his translation of the Bible. Wait, what? Yeah, this word did appear in the other popular translation of the day, the Geneva Bible, like in Isaiah, the victim of the blank will be rescued. But King James didn't like this word, so he took it out and replaced it with something different. The victim of the terrible will be rescued. Another example would be Jeremiah 15:21, which says, "I will redeem you out of the hand of the blank." Overall, in other translations, this word appears about 20 to 30 times, and in every instance, King James and his state-sponsored translators took it out, maybe because they were afraid that it could be used to criticize the monarchy. Of course, I'm talking about the word tyrant. And now you know.
Okay, so I've seen this, and I looked at several others. I've heard other people talking about it. They tend to kind of leapfrog around. They tend to go back in history and pick things that backs their argument. But one thing I wanted to, before I get into what I've seen, is to do a little historical background so we get a firm footing on what we're talking about. And some of this is a little crude. I made it for my kids. But I think it's pretty clear. We began way back in the 4th century, at the time of Augustine, at the time of Jerome, Pope Damascus I, where you'll see here that you've got, of course, Western Europe. You have Eastern Europe over here. This is Turkey, Israel, and of course down here you have Africa, Northern Africa. You have Alexandria. And so this is a place where you have a lot of things going on. The Byzantine Empire was created when Rome split into two pieces. Rome took one side and the Byzantine Empire formed on another. The Byzantine Empire was a little bit more like America in the way it set itself up. It had its own government. It had its own rules. The Greek-speaking Christians were there with their Greek Bibles, and the Greek Bibles were in the hands of the people. The people, if you wanted to make copies and it's in your own language, you could just copy it, and the people kind of kept each other honest. If my Bible said something from yours, all the people in the room go, "Wait a minute, you've left the word out," or "Wait a minute, that's not what it says." So in the Byzantine Empire, kind of more the people and the clergy worked together, and they made copies. Down in Alexandria, the Bible went more into the idea of the elite, of the clergy. They put it into the language of the elite, of the clergy, which was Latin. Most people didn't speak Latin, so you'd have to learn Latin, or just enough Latin to participate in the religious ceremonies. The problem was that Damascus I was finding that the Latin Bibles were not of good quality, and he was suffering and struggling with the Latin Bible. So he commissioned Jerome to go over into northern Africa and up through Israel and try to find some good quality Latin Bible so they can make one text so that everybody can kind of be off of that one text. He was pulling his hair out. I mean, he tend to say that he almost found as many versions as he did copies. It seemed like each copy was different than another copy. So he finally got some together. He put together and presented it to Damascus I, and this became the Latin Vulgate Bible. The Latin Vulgate Bible was the Bible of what we call of Latin of Western Europe. The Catholic Church used it, and they controlled the language, they controlled the Bible, they controlled the readings, they knew the words and the definitions. You had to be more highly skilled and trained to read the Bible. And some of the peasantry just would have to take their word for it and just go through the motions. This was the Catholic Church. Not to say some people didn't have a true heart for God, but the Latin Bible was in a language not of their own tongue. So the Byzantine Empire, though, like I said, they had theirs out with the people. One thing I was going to note here is that some important things that happened after this. Wycliffe came up in 1382, and he wanted to translate the Bible into the common people's language, into English. And he did that and published the Bible. Of course, he was martyred for it. The Roman Catholics killed him for that. That was 1382. And you had Jan Hus, who was a Czechoslovakian preacher who went around teaching that the Bible should be in the language of the common people. And he pushed that, and of course, he too was martyred for his beliefs there in 1382. An important thing that happened, though, and what most people don't realize, there's two important factors that happened to get us to where we are today with our English Bibles. First of them was in 1450, we had the development of the printing press. When Gutenberg made the printing press, and of course the first book he printed was the Bible, but it was the Latin Vulgate. It's kind of all they had. And he printed that Latin Vulgate Bible. And so we had the printing press. 3 years later, and I was talking about the Byzantine Empire, with all those Greek-speaking Christians over there with all their Greek Bibles, the Muslims attacked the Byzantine Empire, and then they'll attack and conquer Constantinople and change its name to Istanbul. And all of those Greek-speaking Christians flooded into Western Europe. Now you've got Latin Bibles, you've got Greek Bibles, so you've got this mixture now happening. There's two men, and there were other men who were part of this. One of them they were George Humongous and Desiderius Erasmus. They came in and wanted to set up Greek-speaking schools for people to learn the Bible, and for seminary people to learn the Bible. The clergy could learn the Bible. So they set that up. Erasmus even set up a Bible which had Latin on one side and Greek on the other, so people could see the differences between the two. Also, at this time, he codified what would become what we call Textus Receptus, the received text. In other words, he did kind of what Jerome did with creating the Latin Vulgate. You go out and find the copies, find what they have in common, and check their validity, make sure there isn't something added by man or something that was duplicated, or check and see if there's any variants. And he created what was called the received text. This is the text of all the Bibles that he would have to bring together. To be fair, that's kind of how all historians do. If you're looking at something like the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, if you look at all the stuff historically, historians have to wade through all of that and find out what's true, what's false, what was hidden, what was, what was plagiarized, all this stuff, and codify our own history. So we realized that this action was not just something done by the Catholic Church or these Byzantine Christians. It was done by anybody wanting to hold on to their historical roots or cultural roots. The Jews would do this to make sure that their history, and make sure that the Torah, and make sure that the Old Testament was succinct. They would make sure that everything lined up. So there's a bigger study on that. So we have the Textus Receptus, and so I'm going to have a list of Bibles here. These are the English Bibles that are coming into play here. You can see them there. There's the Tyndale in 1525. You have the Coverdale, 1535. Matthew's Bible, 1537. The Great Bible, 1538. Geneva Bible, 1557. The Bishop's Bible is in 1568, and the King James is 1611. I put in the first dictionary there in 1604, kind of to show you something for later. So there's 7 Bibles that kind of made its way through. We started with Tyndale in 1525, and remember, this was just before, or this was after 70 years after the fall of the Byzantine Empire. He is most quoted, one of his most popular quotes, as I get ahead of myself, is that I resist the Pope and all of his laws, and if God grants me life, I will cause a boy who drives a plow to know more of the scriptures than you. So the idea is that he got upset with what was happening and the problems and I hate to use the word tyranny, but the tyranny that was happening over the people from the Catholic Church. Actually, I don't hate to use the word tyranny because it's right here. They were tyrannical over the people, not allowing them any kind of say. They didn't even own parts of their religion. They just had to go and participate. So he was wanting to put the word of God out with the people. So he made his New Testament. He was martyred for it. You had Coverdale. He went and they made a new Bible there. And 10 years later, here comes Matthew's. The Great Bible came in Geneva was in 1557. At the time of the Geneva Bible came right after the reign of Bloody Mary, or during the reign actually, when the Catholic monarch, Bloody Mary, came into power and was killing all the Protestants, and that many of these men left and went over to Geneva, and they translated the Bible over there. One thing I'll throw in historically here, where people don't really understand, they think that John Calvin had a lot to do with the Geneva Bible. Actually, he mostly just wrote the preface. He wrote a preface for the Geneva Bible. He was instrumental in the annotatives, in the margins, in putting things in the margins of the Bible. That was something that King James and many others, when we see in a minute, didn't like about the Geneva Bible. The text wasn't that bad. It had some problems, as we'll see. But the problem was all the annotatives, all the notes. We don't have any evidence for this tyranny. The tyrant. We have no evidence. Everything I've seen when I look online, well, in most likelihood, King James didn't like the word tyrant because he took out the word tyrant. He didn't like it, and he took it out. And so, and several of them would draw that conclusion. He obviously didn't like it. He saw it was a threat to his monarchy. That's not how this goes. That I couldn't find anywhere where he spoke against those words or anywhere where he said, leave this word out. I took that site and I went and looked up. They gave some references for tyrants, and I went and looked them all up. And I went back to the bishop. I went back to the Geneva Bible, and also went back to the Great Bible. Now you can get these. These Bibles are available. I was going to show you something on my phone real quick, which I think is interesting. I keep on the bottom here. I have what's known as the Blue Letter Bible. I put the Geneva Bible and my King James side by side. The Blue Letter Bible is a very good resource if you wanted to get it, because you go in there and you pick a scripture. I just have one at random here. And you click it once. Now you can go into the concordance. They have other things you can do, but the interlinear concordance, you push that like this, and it will bring up the Hebrew or the Greek. Then you can just scroll down and you can see each word and the Greek word that goes with it, so you can read it going down. And if you wanted to find out, like here's the word polished. So this is in the Hebrew. So you can click this and you'll see the tense of the word. You'll see that it is a verb. And they'll even...
Strong's H 1305. Barrer.
So I find this to be an excellent resource for looking into these things. Like I said, I have the Geneva Bible and I can go back and forth. But the one thing I found that was interesting, see if I can bring this up, Isaiah 49:25, that's actually where I want it to be. He uses Isaiah 49:25, and I'll use that as my example here. Let me see if I can find this here for 22, 23. Okay. And they said, of course, that thus saith the Lord, even the captives of the mighty shall be taken away, and the prey of the terrible, and it's the word terrible there, that they're saying is, of course, the one that was translated from tyrant, and they're actually true. I went and saw, they give 8 examples, and in the Great Bible, and then the Geneva Bible, there is the word tyrant, or Tyrante, in the Great Bible. But I looked it up here, and when I find this of the terrible, it is the word ares, but it is an adjective. Now that to me starts tweaking something. Now wait a minute. If this is an adjective and not a noun, see, they're banking it on the preface that he is a tyrant. That's a noun. And all of these words are nouns. He's talking about tyrant. No, he's talking about the verb form, the adjective form, which is more like tyranny. Here they say it's awe-inspiring, terror-striking, awesome, terrifying, ruthless, mighty. Doesn't even have the word tyrant in here, the word violent, oppressor. So when you look at these, when you go back to the interlinear Bible, you see that actually King James made some good choices. This is an adjective. It is not a noun. So I find that very disconcerting. And to think that also what you saw where Geneva was in the line of Bibles, why would they be the standard? You're going to go back to the Great Bible. One other thing I wanted to break up is that the first dictionary came out in 1604. Before that time, there was no concerted definition of words in the English language. The English language kind of was where you were in the British Isles, So they came up with a dictionary in 1604. So how can you say, what was the standard, the static definition of tyrant in 1538? There wasn't. And I would say that I think that actually the word was probably more tyrannical, tyrancy. The idea that, and when I read these scriptures just by themselves, they're talking about people being tyrants. They're talking about people oppressing one another. They're talking about kings. Now, the Old Testament has word for kings, and the New Testament has words for kings, and they're very static. There's a lot of words in the Bible that are static, but this word is not. You'll find that this is an adjective, not a noun. Now, I wanted to stop this part 1, and I'm going to do a part 2 in a minute where we talk about King James and the Hampton Courts. So I'm going to take a break here, and I'll get right back to it. Thank you.